Hello world, double thumbs here. Vintage lenses provide a cost-effective alternative to expensive modern lenses, provided that you're able to find an adapter to fit it onto your camera. And your friends and family might have one of these old film cameras, lenses, or film cameras lying around in their basement. While playing around with the Minolta X700 that my dad bought in the 1980s, I realized the lens on it was a Samsung. Yes, a Samsung. Well, this is basically a rebranded version of the Minolta MD 50mm f1.4, but I wondered, can I put this on the Sony A6400? And surely enough, there was a adapter available to put the Minolta MD lenses or the SR lenses onto the Sony E-mount. And with this adapter, well, I'm able to put it on. Let's go see if we can use vintage lenses for non-professional YouTube videos. So why these vintage lenses are great. And the biggest and the first reason is that it's cheap. Really cheap. And as I mentioned, I got this for free, but even if you're not that lucky, you can usually buy these lenses for anywhere between $20 to $100, which is significantly cheaper than modern autofocus lenses, which are anywhere between a few hundreds to a few thousands. And you can't justify making that purchase if you're not a professional. Oh yeah, I'll just buy these $3,000 GM lenses and just have instant noodles for the rest of the month. It's fine. It's not fine. So vintage lenses provide a cost-effective way to add more field of view for a very little cost. And the lens I got is a 50mm f1.4. That's a very bright lens for free. Look at these low light videos. They're amazing. The second great thing about vintage lenses is that they teach you and force you to learn about manual focus and other camera parameters. Autofocus is great, especially for video, but having these manual focus vintage lenses teach you how to do manual focus and also other camera knowledge. For example, it's much easier to understand the concept of f-stop when the hole gets bigger as you turn the dial. That sounds weird. Because you have the control of the aperture and focus, you have to look into these concepts and learn about them in order to use them correctly. And I learned a lot from using this lens. And the third reason is that it's unique. It's like owning a classic car. Anybody can buy a brand new BMW 3 Series, but not a lot of people can say they own a E30 M3 from the 80s. And it's just that much more satisfying to turn these knobs and hear those clicks as you adjust the focus or adjust the aperture. Now on to some reasons why vintage lenses might not be so great. And the first reason is that it might not be the best for video because of the manual focus. Manual focus, it might not be that big of an issue for photos because you just have to be in focus for that moment that you take the photo. For a video, you have to constantly adjust the focus, and it may not be the best if you're a one-man film crew because you can't always adjust your camera parameters while you're filming, and you might miss your autofocus lenses. And especially if it's a moving subject, then I think it's very difficult to catch focus. So the only place or only situation that I would use my 50mm f1.4 lens would be when I'm stationary. Like now. If I move away or towards the camera, then it's not so fun anymore. But this may be because my vintage lens is a 50mm f1.4, so it's relatively telephoto, because I haven't had that much issue with another manual focus lens, which is a wider broken on 12mm f2.0. I haven't had that much issues maintaining focus because it's so wide. And the second negative of these vintage lenses is that there are a lot of alternatives available. Sony has the 50mm f1.8 OSS, which has autofocus and lens stabilization, and Sigma 30mm f1.4, and these two are one of the best lenses for the Sony E-mount. And if you're able to spend $100 to $200 more, you get autofocus and sometimes lens stabilization, which are two very important things in video making. And other brands have these cheap autofocus lenses as well. For example, the Panasonic 25mm f1.7, that's also a very cheap autofocusing lens. And if you're able to spend $100 or $200 more to put into a lens that's gonna go onto your $1,000 camera, it's gonna make your workflow a lot simpler and quicker. So I think it is a worthy investment. And if you're buying these lenses used, like you're buying these vintage lenses used, then it's definitely worth the extra $100 to $200. So the third and the last reason that vintage lenses might not work is their questionable lens quality and the adapters. Being tens of years old, these lenses might have scratches, other damages, fungal growths, or cracks on the lens body itself. And if you're not a lens professional, then you're better off buying from a reputable camera shop. And also the adapters. The adapters might not exist for your camera, although most of them do. They do add a bit of size and weight to your camera. I mean, look at this small vintage lens, but with an adapter, it's a much bigger, and the adapter does not want to fit today. And with the adapter, it's a much bigger lens to put onto your camera. Vintage lenses are low risk, high return assets that everyone should try. But for solo video work, I can't recommend using vintage lenses just because autofocus is not that much more expensive and it's available for you and makes your life so much quicker and easier. But if you're not a professional, and since money doesn't grow on trees, vintage lenses provide a cost-effective alternative to adding a fast and bright lens that allow you to shoot in low light situations where your kit lens might not be suitable for. But what are your thoughts on using vintage lenses for video? Let me know down below, and until next time, and BAM!